What's going on, Forceful players? Ryan Miles here from Untilt Gaming here with episode number 15 of the Daily Mileage. Now, it is Wednesday night, and I usually try and make these videos with the intention that you'll be listening to them on your commute to work on Thursday, or if you're a European, it's already Thursday for you probably. So we'll be doing our throwback episode, talking about like the history of aggro decks, kind of looking back at Bahamut, Necro, Pricia, that kind of stuff. And this is, of course, in tribute to our new Lord and Savior, Kirik, who is doing very, very well in testing. Again, these are not my words. I still have not yet played a game with the new set at all, but this is piggybacking off of the words of Zach Tufford, Aaron Miles, some pretty good players. So my understanding is that Kirik is doing extremely well, and the only deck that's really able to keep up at all right now is actually Scheherazade. So that's two predictions I got right. Excellent. We're halfway there. So yeah, let's look back at the history of aggro decks. So if you guys remember Bahamut was kind of like the first mistake that FoW made. That was the format that I started playing in. It was like right after the original Grand Prix Providence. That was like the first tournament that I looked at the results of to like help build a deck out of. And it was right after the dual structure decks came out. Now, I cannot confirm this like 100%, but my understanding was that FoW designed the Alice cluster sets like all at once, or like relatively all at once, and then like when they released their structure decks, they weren't supposed to just like release they didn't initially plan to release the Melgus and the Faria structure deck before also like releasing the Machina, the Pricia, and crucially the Rezard structure deck. So Levitine existing before we had Maribel or Death Scythe was kind of a mistake. And again, this is my understanding of it. And it really kind of dominated the format, and actually like was the first locals killing ruler, where people stopped showing up to play FoW because they were tired of getting smashed by Bahamut. And that's understandable, right? So when you lose to Bahamut, the game's over on turn 2, and there are not cards that exist in the game for you to do anything about it. Like you are, like if the Bahamut deck opens like Rook Egg, Levitine, Excalibur, like you're just gonna die. So there's no Maribel to kill Levitine. There's no Barrier of Shadows to make it so they can't tap their Regalia. There's no Death Scythe, so they're always gonna have Swiftness. There's no Final Forfeit. That card's not even a thought yet. Like there's just literally nothing that exists in the game. It's kind of like how when Feyre was printed, we had literally nothing that existed in the game to remove their counters in an efficient manner. Like that, just when they entered the field, as they entered the field, they got them. We didn't get last days until like 2 sets later. Same kind of deal here. So Bahamut was the first really nutty aggro J-Ruler deck. And Bahamut was like playable before that. Like it actually won GP Providence in like a kind of control format. And that was kind of off the back of a errata of fetal movement. But it was still like Cthulhu was still a good card. Bahamut was still a good card. Split Heaven and Earth was still a good card, etc., etc. But the problem with the structure deck is suddenly you had Levitine and Excalibur, which just buffed the hell out of your J-Ruler and allowed it to hit for like 2,000 when it flipped. You had Guinevere, which means that you got to dig more for these cards, and you had like other like turn 1 plays besides just Hunter in the Black Forest. You got Rook Egg, crucially, which, as you may or may not have heard, Rook Egg Cthulhu is a very good combo and has been a very good combo in FoW for almost 3 years now. So like those cards just, suddenly being in the game just really pushed Bahamut over the edge. And it wasn't until they printed not only Death Scythe, but like Blazer, specifically the Ruler Blazer, which, as you know, when you J-activate, just kills target J-Ruler. So if you play a bunch of Death Scythe and Blazer, and then, Blazer makes all your stones red, so you get to play Guinevere, and if you get to play Guinevere, that means you get to play more copies of Death Scythe than you really should be allowed to, because you can discard them when you don't need them. A lot of good things in that set that actually, like, efficiently countered the Bahamut Ruler. And I think that like the SKL format, like that one set before we got Reflector Fane, was actually like one of the best formats in FoW. But anyway, I digress. So Bahamut was kind of a mistake across the board, but was like quickly fixed, and they did a really good job. It wasn't like necessarily a design oversight. It was just that they printed the answers and like the questions, I guess. Like there's answers to the Levitine problem. So like the problem and the answers were not printed at the same time. And that's something that like Jeff Finnegan has talked about on his stream, where that's not going to happen anymore, which we hope, we hope. So next big aggro deck, which is a lot more reminiscent of the current Kirik deck, was Necrolance. And the reason that Necrolance is more like the Keurig deck than Bahamut is because Necrolance had a lot of resonator damage. So Bahamut was just like Levitine, Excalibur, my ruler does 2,000 damage, and then next turn it does the extra 1,000 and I win the game. But Necrolance was like a mid-rangey board control, but still an aggro deck, right? Because it still played Rook Egg. I'm sorry, it still played Rook Egg Cthulhu, and then it just played Lancelot, like not only just to like hit you for 1,000, but it also like controlled your board by killing off your resonators. And what's impressive to me, right, is that Necrolance was a dominating deck in an era where we had Robe of the Fire Rat, and there were Reflect Refrain Alice's World decks that were main decking multiple copies of Robe of the Fire Rat, and Necrolance was still a tier 1 dominant deck. Like, it was still able to take games off of Alice's World consistently. I actually did win a Grand Prix with Necrolance, so like the evolution of Necrolance was that, okay, we understand that Necrolance exists, it's like a red-black aggro deck. You just you play like mono red stones because you play Split Heaven and Earth, and you play some black stones because you can afford the life damage with Split Heaven and Earth, and because you want to be able to cast your Necrolance if you see it. And that was like the initial like version. Then Italy had a Grand Prix where I think 7 of the top 8 slots were a lot of people that are now in like CCG. It was like Federico, Leo, Giovanni, I believe, and just it was this red-blue-black aggro deck, and it was off the back of Pumpkin Witch, Adam Brawley, and Cheshire Cat. So you would play your Pumpkin Witch on like turn 5 or something, when you had already like chipped him down a couple turns with like your typical aggro Cthulhu, you know, Lancelot stuff. But your finishing play was play Pumpkin Witch, sacrifice, like hit them with all your Swiftness resonators, sacrifice a Cheshire Cat and like a red resonator for Adam Brawley. Adam Brawley's now getting these necromancies out of the graveyard. He's hitting them in the air for 10. You play another Adam Brawley. It's got consistent card draw because of Cheshire Cat and Adam Brawley. Like, it had a lot of cool things going on. The deck that I ended up playing was red green black, and the green allowed you to play cards like Elvish Bowman and Sinbad to like have main board answers for Robe of the Fire Rat. And then you also had some pretty cool stuff going on. Like, I had some interesting techs like Underground Dragger for the mirror, but mostly like the green was just for the addition removal, and I didn't feel like I needed the blue stuff to like actually have lethal, because if you can kill the robes, then you're going to be fine anyway. And then the green version had like a better like matchup against specifically the blue version, because you could kill their robes and they couldn't kill your robes. So like their Pumpkin Witch pop-off was like only going to deal Adam Brawley damage because you had more robes than them, and like you could still control the board with like Lancelot and stuff like that. But crucially, you got the sideboard into Kane, Apostle guy. I don't even remember his actual name. He's like this 7/7 that flips for 1, where you tap, you pay a redstone, and you can deal 200 damage. And remember, Levitine was still like a card, so you would like tap a bunch of Levitine, and you could kill Gwybers for 1 mana. Like, this was, you know, this was before Gale Force. Like, you did not kill Gwybers efficiently in this format, but Kane, couple Levitine on the sideboard, that's all you gotta do. So even though you didn't have like you had like a 50-50 matchup game 1 against Alice's World, but then they realized you weren't a J-Ruler deck, so they usually didn't side in like Flame of the Outer World or anything like that. You just side into Kane and you just clap them games 2 and 3, or, you know, just game 2 and you get the 2-0. So that was like the creature deck, right? There was no like, you could Thunder Guinevere's. There was no like, the only like 2 mana answer to Lancelot was like Stoning to Death / Flame of the Outer World, but like it was super consistent because it was a Reflect Refrain deck. So like that's like the more kind of way that I see Keurig right now. It's definitely not like Keurig. I don't think is as good as Necrolance was. But the problem is, like, you're just playing. Like, first of all, you play Cthulhu on turn 1. It doesn't have swiftness, but you're playing Cthulhu on turn 1. Like, you're just playing a 5/5. And then like so like if you think about it this way, right? Cthulhu turn 1 does 1,000 damage by turn 2 because it hits you turn 1 for 5, and then it hits you turn 2 for 5. Turn 1 Pielieli does not hit you for 5 on turn 1, but it hits you for 9 on turn 2, so it's almost Cthulhu. Obviously, it doesn't have the same kind of interactions and stuff, but like comparing the formats, it's a lot of pressure on your life total very early, and because of like turn 2 Sylvia or like turn 2 Piggy, it's very unlikely that Pielieli ends up getting blocked that early. So, like, you're just taking almost half your life total by turn 2. Like, that's what the Keurig deck does. It's like Sylvia, Peleali hit you for 15 turn 2. And then you've got 2,500 life left. I've still got 1,500 damage represented on board. I'm about to go to turn 3 and play a whole Pig Squadron. Like, there's just so much damage coming at you so fast. And especially because, like, Hoa Pig Squadron has precision, it kind of almost does play out like the old Necrolance matchup. The Necrolance matchup was really cool because he would use Reflect Frame's untapped triggers to make sure your creatures couldn't be attacked. So like the 3-drop slot in that deck sometimes played like Gareth, the God, I can never say his name. He's a 3-mana 8/8 Knight of the Round Table. His name's Gareth. He has precision, or he had target attack at the time, but he has precision. So you could even attack like untapped Lancelots and stuff. And that was a card that actually saw some play because of precision. But yeah, so kind of throwback to that, just plays very similar to that, which means like the Keurig mirrors, I imagine, again, haven't played the Keurig mirror yet, are actually going to be very board control focused, where you're going to be trying to make sure that you have this critical mass of dudes that you can just deal like 3,000 damage in a turn, and it's more important to like win the board and then threaten like a bunch of damage in one turn than it will be to incrementally chip out damage over time. And then our last throwback aggro deck, we're going to skip ahead to Pricia, which was just, once again, Bahamut. This is deal 4,000 damage with your ruler, right? So the Resonators in Pricia mattered more than Bahamut, but they weren't traditional aggro Resonators, right? So the most popular Pricia deck was Pricia Myths. It was just this like dual threat deck where you have to be worried about suddenly taking 4,000 damage in one turn from their J-Ruler, and you also had to be worried about just having your entire board removed by an Izanagi and then only taking 2,000 damage. So there was like no winning plays that you could make against that deck. This was before we had Severing Winds to beat Spinning Myths, and then like once Severing Winds came out, it didn't even make Pricia worse. It was, oh my god. That's, I think, like the biggest oversight in Force of Will's career, even more than Reflector Frame. Pricia was just kind of obnoxious. So that was like the initial iterations, right? You had the Spinning Myths where there was nothing you could do, because if you wanted to like play a Feasting deck and like throw out 12/12 flyers to block the Pricia, they would just Izanagi them and then hit you for 4,000. If you wanted to just like play this slow, grindy control deck that played like way too many Black Moonbeams and Death Scythes so that you could kill their ruler, they would just beat you down with Izanagi anyway. If you're playing anything else, they would just kill you with Pricia in the air. Just literally nothing you can do. And then there was also the Jack Giant version, which I personally preferred. I thought that the Jack Giant version didn't have a good head-to-head matchup against the Izanagi deck, but you could, like, the Jack Giant version had like a better Fox matchup, a better like Feasting matchup, that kind of, or not Feasting, but there were other matchups. Control matchups, like actual Alhamat decks. Like Alhamat wanted to use Rune of Soul to search Black Moonbeam and make sure it could always kill Pricia. I don't even remember. I think it still had Stoning to Death because we still had Alice Cluster. So it would use stuff like that to kill Izanagi. And it was like passable, but it completely crumbled to the Jack Giant version because Mariabella was in that deck. And if you've played, you know, Red Green Fae or this format, or like Pricia post-rotation, like Mariabella is just a house of a card against control. So between the two versions, Pricia, the Izanagi was more popular. The Mariabella version was better against control, in my opinion. And like there was just no deck that you could build that could keep up with every single version of Pricia and every single like angle that Pricia wanted to attack from. And then of course rotation happened. First like the Levantine Bane happened, and then like Pricia kind of fell off, and we saw more Tree 2, we saw more Fox, and we saw a little bit of Green Blue Black Lumia control because it beat everything that wasn't Pricia. But then rotation, Alice Cluster rotates out, we get the first set of Rhea Cluster, we get Fair's Spell. We still have Severing Winds, and we lose all the Regalia, but now it's just a Pricia Fox format. Nothing keeps up. Sprinting Flame Horse is like the most important card, because now we have a way to give Pricia swiftness again. Even though she's not hitting for 4,000, she's still hitting for a lot. And because we had like Sylvia in the format, just these like turn 1 Sacred Elf, turn 2 Sylvia, play another 1-drop, stuff like that. There was just a lot of damage coming at you all the time. And it was like the most pure aggro deck where it was actually aggro Resonators that curved into like a J-Ruler finish, and that's kind of what like the original Bahamut was. But like this had a little bit more Resonator damage, I feel. But yeah, that was like the new Pricia, and that's really not where Keurig is right now either. Keurig is not very J-Ruler centric. The J-Ruler is just kind of there to clear the board on like turn 4 and make sure that all your resonators can hit your opponent in the face. Which is a problem, but a very different problem from the old J-Ruler decks that we used to have. So that's my trip through aggro lane. Any last things I want to say? Burn spells, right? So Kirik's like suite of spells. So Ground and Air Supremacy is obviously a problem, but catching up to today, the old burn spells in the old decks, Bahamut would play Split Heaven and Earth, it would play Thunder, it would sometimes play Purifying Fire if it was really trying to go over the top. But then, like, Necrolance played Thunder, but, like, you played Thunder not because you wanted to hit people in the face for 5. You played Thunder because you wanted to kill your opponent's Guinevere for 1 mana. Like, that was the most popular use. And then against, like, Alice's World matchups, you didn't use Thunder to hit face. You used Thunder to kill Morgiana. You used Thunder to kill Sacred Elf on turn 1. Like, it was mostly, like, just 1-drop removal. And that was just like the way the format was, but like it also obviously late game like doubled as, oh, I need to hit you in the face for 5. Oh, look, that's lethal, cool. And the deck did play like, even though the later iterations, the blue-black and the green-black iterations of Necrolance played 10 special stones, they still played Split Heaven and Earth because mostly Alice's World. Once you got in those first couple turns of damage with like Cthulhu's and Lancelot's, they played Robe of the Fire Rat. Suddenly you don't get to do resonator damage anymore, so you just like double split them and oh look, you won the game. That's pretty cool. And then Pricia didn't play like any burn spells. Original like aggro Pricia, like when the card first came out and before people put spinning myths in the deck, played Thunder or Lightning Strike. Sorry, and I'm 95% sure that like the Jack Giant and Izanagi decks didn't play Lightning Strike, and I could be completely wrong. I really am trying to remember. I'm 90% sure they did not play Lightning Strike because that deck was so tight on space. You had like 10 Regalia, like 12 combo pieces. Like, there's no way. They didn't play Lightning Strike. You can tell me I'm wrong, but we'll find out when I actually look at the list. But then, yeah, the new age Pricia deck, the post rotation Pricia deck, did play Lightning Strike. It played Sacred Elf, Fiery Fox, Mariabella, Sylvia, and then like a couple like Lightning Strikes, but really just not, like most of the damage was Resonator based. But now Kirik is like the least J-Ruler, like it's like the Kirik is almost Reflector Frame because it's just there to filter your deck and find you extra cards. But it does play, you know, 1600 damage worth of burn spells because it plays the 4 Heaven, Thunder, and Dragon Prom. So even if you are able to stabilize and like remove all of Kirik's resonators, it's still able to find a little bit extra reach over the top. Just very, very scary deck, and I think it does have like the most throwback potential to Reflector Frame Necrolance, which is like the second best aggro deck out of the 3, in my opinion, because I think Pricia shouldn't have been printed. But yeah, so that's the throwback Thursday, Wednesday hybrid for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll be back tomorrow with something spicy, so hopefully finally getting some games in and can talk about like my interpretation of the format. That's what I'm hoping for. So you guys take it easy. Hope you have a good one, and I will see you tomorrow.